So we're continuing with our boulder session at Element. This is not a new day of training. This is a continuation of yesterday's video. I just had a lot of content since this was a super long session, like much longer than my normal sessions. Like 2 hours. The session ended up being 2 hours, which doesn't seem like that long, but since my sessions are usually a lot shorter, it is a lot for me. And I often like kind of train at like a high frequency, like I'm like not resting a whole lot. I train like pretty fast paced, and so I end up cramming a lot of climbing into like shorter amount of time than most people. So a 2 hour session for me is like, it's a lot of climbing, which can kind of be a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes maybe I ought to rest a little bit more than I do, but it can actually kind of be some good endurance training, actually, like accidentally. I find I'm always pretty well prepped for comps, like in a lot of different formats. Like in a 5 on 5 off, I'll kind of have that endurance already built up where I need to like try like give like high effort attempts like back to back, like pretty fast. It actually kind of helps me with that, and it's something I kind of naturally developed over like years of just kind of training like this naturally. But it can also hurt me when, let's say it's like a modified scramble format where you have these long lines and you got to wait for your boulders. Sometimes it can bite me in the butt because I'm not used to long rests and I'll get cold often. Yeah, but anyway, that's kind of how it goes. So we have like a 2 hour session of training today that happened and got a lot of climbing in that time. So this is the next kind of hour of our training. We're trying another 7 here. Like I said, in Element, the grading is 1 to 7, so this is a 7. This is one of the hardest grade tags. And you see here, I finally stick this crazy crux move on this dyno here, and then I screw up the ending. I had kind of forerun the ending on a couple tries before just to kind of suss it out. And this hold over the lip here is dual tech side up. And so on the attempt when I did it, when I was just forerunning the ending, I was kind of feeling the sloper, and I was like, okay, this is a little bit too slippery to just grab and match. I felt like I would just slip right off. And so instinctively, I decided to jump 2 hands to it and kind of stack my hands to minimize the sliding, which worked. And it felt easy when I did it. And so when I finally stuck that jump move from the bottom, I just rushed the ending, and I was like, oh, okay, it's just an easy 2-hand jump up to this hold on lip. And I was a bit too far up from the wall, and the dual text was like very unforgiving, and there was no pulling myself back into the wall once I had screwed up. And so I kind of biffed this end, and I wasn't able to stick that jump again. I never even really figured out what the right movement was after trying it so many times. I don't know necessarily what worked on that one try that I stuck it, because the left palm you're going for is like dual text. It creates so many variables that I was really confused by how to make it work. I think that I had to like twist my hand in the opposite way. Normally you'd kind of want your palm facing the wall, but I actually wanted my palm facing me, and I think that's what made it stick. But I wasn't able to find that again. I was close a couple times, but yeah, after like having basically stuck the crux of the climb and having done kind of what the most important sequence of the climb, I gave it a few tries to see if I could repeat it, but after that it was not worth to keep trying it anymore. So I moved on. And now we are trying this boulder. This slab, holy cow. First of all, it's such a cool looking boulder. It's like a beautiful boulder on these cool volumes, these cool like yellow holds, and it's a 7 tag. And when I was like kind of going out and scoping out all the boulders before the session, this was the one that I was like most excited to try. You know, oftentimes you'll go to the gym and like kind of look at what boulders you have to get on, and you'll always have one that you're like, you can't wait to get on, you're itching to try. This was the one for me for sure. I really wanted to test my slab skills on this boulder. And I had been climbing for about an hour and 15 minutes at this point, and we finished at like 2 hours for this whole boulder session. And clearly I spent 45 minutes trying this boulder. It was so hard. And at first you can see like these first 2 tries of mine, it looks like, how is this guy gonna send this boulder? He's not even close to doing this first move. And after giving the first move a couple tries, I was like, oh wow, this feels impossible. I don't think I'm gonna send this. I might just move on soon. But then every time I tried the boulder, I've like discovered 1 or 2 little things that had me getting closer, and so it was giving me hope to keep trying it. And every little attempt I made progress, so I kept working it. This first move is this really funky little jump to the left the hold you're starting on is not a jug. It's kind of like a flat edge, so you can't just grab the hold and then swing your whole body around and then get as much momentum as you want. It's like a very precarious balance point, how far back you can swing, and you have to do it really cautiously so that you don't just tip off. Because, you know, if the hold was a jug, you could just like pull yourself right back in, but it's not a jug, it's, you know, it's just flat. So it's just really really, there's a lot of moving parts in this swing on the first move. I start the boulder, and there's like this sort of sequence I have to do where I push off the wall, and then I time it perfectly so that I kick off of the wall behind me as a back flag, and then you have to sink down low and kind of create this U shape with your swing in order to get some purchase off your right foot and push yourself to the left. So it's this crazy move where everything has to be timed right. You push off the wall, you back step, like back flag off the wall behind you as a smear to push yourself down, create your U swing, and then go to the left. And all these things have to go perfectly. Any little mess up and then it's just like a wasted attempt. So here you can see I'm like trying to learn the movement, and then the volume you're jumping to is very slopey, and every time it just feels like I'm barely grabbing anything, and it's all kind of in the balance point. And the volume that you're standing on with your left is also very slopey. So it's just everything kind of needs to be perfect for this move. In order to get as much purchase as I can from this volume I'm stepping on, I have to land it in a full foot position, you can see. And if I like just land it on the ball of my foot, especially because I'm wearing some new shoes as well, like that's probably, this element is kind of probably making the boulder a bit harder for me. Maybe if my shoes are a bit softer, I could just use the ball of my foot, but especially with these stiff shoes, in order to get as much friction as possible to prevent my foot from just slipping, I have to use my full foot, and I can't just use the ball of my foot or it'll just slip. And like, of course, like usually when you use your full foot, it's a lot more unlikely for your foot to slip just because there's more friction to play with and more rubber. And my first few tries, like, and here as well, still I'm trying this, is I see the move is like, okay, I have to land it as like, I grab the volume, I step, and this heel has to catch. So at this point, I'm still trying that, which I discover later, you don't actually need the heel. You can see actually the start volume, I end up grabbing that later, and I kind of do like a hand foot catch, which is a bit easier than like the heel. The heel is kind of unnecessary. And then the rest of the boulder doesn't let up. The hardest part of the boulder, I actually think, isn't necessarily the first move, it's this part here, where you kind of like the transition, okay, like matching feet on this volume is hard, but it's not too hard. And then once you're kind of compressing this tiny little foothold and the volume with your right, you have to lean over to the left, and this is the hardest part of the boulder. It's like your feet are so bad, and at any point it feels like one can slip. You have to go as slow as possible to press on that left yellow volume, and then kind of work yourself into a position where you can mantle up with both your hands. You saw I kind of gave the ending like a little bit of a forerun. Once you're mantled up, it's not too bad. You can just get your foot up, and then the last couple holds are okay, and you always feel super secure. But this transition, like the whole time, this volume that you're on is so slippery and so slippery, and it just feels like you're gonna slip off every time you're pressing on this volume. And so you can see I'm finally making some progress on this boulder. I've been sticking the first move a bit more consistently now, and I've kind of discovered this hand, like grabbing the start volume instead of like the heel hook. And so often when I'm trying to like send a slab like this, in order to close the gap between not sending it and sending it as much as possible, if I fall and I've already formed the ending here and I know what to expect, I'll get right back on and try and obviously get as close to a send as possible. So here I send it with 2 mini falls where I get right back on. And so by trying the ending, by getting on again right away after falling, it will allow me to feel what it feels like to try like do these moves with the same amount of fatigue that you would have from a ground attempt. So that's what I'll try to do, and that helps me close the gap between sending a boulder and not sending it. And so here after that try where I felt like I made a lot of progress, I'm doing the boulder again, and this time I do it with only 1 fall. And so I stick the first move, and I'm making this transition, and as I'm leaning over to the left, I'm just kind of going as slow as possible. I start by pressing my thumb on the hold, and I'm trying to inch my hand bit by bit, but at some point you just kind of have to commit to getting these 2 presses. And then you see here, it's not over once you got your hands in this position. This volume, as soon as you're on the left and you're not kind of able to put all your weight into it, it's just so slippery, and your hands just start slipping and slipping, and it feels like you can get no purchase on it. And to get more purchase on it, you have to press as hard as you can with your left, and you're just pressing so hard between these two holds, and then all of a sudden, and you're trying to focus on the feet as well at the same time. This boulder is like super complicated. And so now here we are finally. I was almost ready to call it after that, like sending it with one fall in the middle there and hopping right back on. But this boulder just had my number. I put too much into it, and I couldn't stop trying this boulder until I wasn't able to walk anymore. And it was because this is like the second day that I'm wearing these shoes as well, and my feet were just killing me at this point, like standing on these volumes over and over in new shoes, 2 hours into the session, and this slab just kind of demands everything of you, that it was just such a struggle fest. And that's why I'm calling it my hardest slab send ever, just like all the factors. And here I finally like get the transition, I get my foot up, and I'm able to send the boulder. And oftentimes when you have like a slab where you have to be so precarious in order to get the send, and you have to be so just calm, it really requires me to practice the skill of just not caring. In order to send a boulder like this, and when I was able to send this boulder, I had to just, like, every time I got on the wall, it's like, I don't care if I send this boulder or not. Really, really just being able to take the pressure off of yourself. Because if you're shaky on like a slab like this, you're just gonna be too tense and not be able to send it. So thankfully, I was able to dig deep and just kind of find that calm mind state where I was able to let go of all the pressure and get this ascend of this awesome boulder. Like, what a good slab. Had a great time working it. So yeah, that wraps up our first day of training at Element. Tomorrow is a campus session on their really cool spray wall, and then a workout at the end. And that will be our time here in Munich.